Welcome! In this series of short videos, we will look at topics for the PowerBasic console compiler. Today we will look at using your first processing project to do some analysis using the console compiler. This was our application at the end of the last video. Our application generates a file, a CSV file, and in this CSV file are days of the week, ranging from Monday through Friday. At the moment, this particular application takes the current date and works backwards. We're going to change the application today to get it to work forwards. This is very easily done. Let's go and have a quick look at our code. At the moment, we're looking 900 days into the past. We're going to change that to look 90 days into the future. If we have a look at our processing, we'll see within this function we're picking up the current date, and we're looking backward in time. So we're going to change that, so we're going to look forward. And we will remove some of our commented out code, as we're not going to be using this in today's video. So here is the line of code that steps us back a day. So we're now going to step forward a day by simply removing the minus sign. So with these small changes to the application, if we run it now, we should generate a file looking forward in time. So our application has processed successfully. Let's have a quick look at the folder, and we can see we have an output day list. If we double click on that, we'll see it's currently starting at the 12th of March 2026, which is tomorrow, and then it's moving forward a total of 90 days. So now that we've generated a file of 90 days in the future showing days of the week, what else are we going to do to allow some processing to take place? Well, we're going to copy in two additional CSV files. The first is going to be a list of staff working for your organization, and we're storing this in a file called staff.csv. If we open that file up, we'll see that this file contains a list of 6 staff. We're storing this information in a number of fields. First of all, an employee number, which is unique to the employee. Then we have a staff name, and then 2 additional date columns. A start date, saying when the person started with the organization, and an end date, to indicate that the person has now left the organization. This is the type of information that could be extracted from an HR system. Additionally, we're going to copy in a second CSV file, and this is one we're going to call holidays.csv. If we open this up, it will have 3 columns: the employee identifier, the member of staff's name, and the date on which they plan on taking some holidays. In this case, we have 1 day, which is in the past, 1 day, which is the current day, and a number of other dates in the future. What we intend doing in this application is to marry these files together to produce an output that shows how many members of staff will be available for work on a particular day. So there are 2 types of calculation that are going to be used here. One to calculate the number of staff who could, in theory, work on a particular day, and also a calculation on how many staff are on holiday on that day. So let's go and have a look at our code. So there are going to be a number of changes to our application to allow us to do this processing. Since we were doing some profiling in the last video, we're going to put a tools off command at the beginning of our code. This ensures that if we've left any profiling commands in the code, these will be ignored when the application is compiled. And there is our tools off command, right at the beginning of the code. So as we're going to be doing quite a bit of calculation with dates, we're probably going to have to use some date functions. So to make this easier, I'm going to include one of our libraries. This is a date functions library. If we have a look at that library, we'll see there are quite a number of functions in here. We're only going to be using a couple of these, but it's very useful to have such libraries on hand to save you quite a bit of coding. I'll cover these 2 functions when we get to them in the code. So what else are we going to change at the beginning of our code? As we're going to be dealing with not one but 3 files, we'll need to store those file names somewhere. So at the moment, we have a string constant for the output file name. We're going to add 2 additional file names to this list, one for the holidays and one for the staff. And as some of you will be using date formats in the UK or the US format, we're going to create another constant which you can change quite easily to move from one to the other. Additionally, as we have 3 files we're going to be pulling into arrays, we'll need some easy way of identifying which field we're actually dealing with. So I'm going to create a number of enumerations, one for the output day list, one for holidays, and one for the staff CSV file. These enumerations are quite useful. To specify the date column, we merely have to put in output day.date, and this will use the 0 element. And for the holiday and staff fields, we will have something similar. With enumerations, if you make the first one equal to a value, and then put nothing for the next fields, they will increment by 1. So the staff name will have a value of 2, start date will have a value of 3, and so on. I'm also going to make a change to the call to our process function. At the moment, it takes 2 parameters. It takes the date and the output file. I'm going to add on the log file, as I want some of the later functions to actually log information to the log file of this process. You often find when developing applications that functions and subroutines will evolve during the development phase. So since we've added an extra parameter on to the call to the process function, we will also need to change the beginning of the process function itself to add on this extra parameter. So there is our third parameter, the name of the variable used to hold the name and the path to the log file. So we have some hard coding in here where we're dimensioning the days array. So we're going to change that, and we're going to put in one of the constants we defined in the enumerations a few moments ago. And there is our enumeration, output day.workers. So now that we have defined our string array to hold the days, we'll need to define our arrays for the holidays and the staff. So there we have the 2 lines of code, one dimensioning the string array for holidays and one for the staff. We haven't set the size of these arrays yet, we're just defining them as being string arrays. So next, we'll want to load the information that's in the holidays CSV file into the array we have created. And we're going to use a common function for this called read the CSV file into an array. And we're going to do exactly the same for the staff array. So here is the code to do that. This new function, which we have yet to define, will return a value of true or false. True if we have successfully managed to load the file into the array, and false if we cannot. It takes only 2 parameters, the first being the name and path to the holidays file, which we're using our constant for, and the name of the array into which we wish to place the data. If this does return true, we can print out to our screen the holidays are loaded, and we will do exactly the same for the staff data. If this cannot be loaded, we can actually print the messages out to the screen, and we can append to our log file. As the staff data will be essential for calculating the output file, we will return to the calling function if we cannot load the CSV file. And if we cannot load the holidays file, then we will also exit the function. So let's now go and create this new function. And here is the read the CSV file into an array function, taking its 2 parameters. This will read a CSV file into a 2-dimensional array, and is probably one of the files you'll use quite a lot if you use CSV files and you need to process them in arrays. It's quite simply opening the file for input, doing a file scan to see how many records we have, dimensioning the array for that size, counting the number of columns, and then putting the data into those rows and columns. And should an error occur, we will return the value false. Otherwise, we will return the value true. So now that we have that set up, let's go back to our process function. Within this process function, we are generating the information for all of the days we're looking ahead for. And at one point in the function, we're going to populate the array with data. And here is the section that performs that task. So we're currently populating a date string and a day of week string. We're going to add on an extra column in here, which will be the number of workers that are available for work on that particular day. So these constants here are going to have to be replaced. And we're replacing them with our enumerations that we created earlier. And our third column is this one here. This is the workers column. So we need to create another new function whose job it will be to work out just how many workers are available on that particular day. So we're going to create this new workers available function. We're going to give it 3 parameters. First of all, the date that we are processing for. Secondly, a pointer to both the holidays array and the staff array. So let's now go and create this new function. So here is the skeleton of our new function taking its 3 parameters. This will return the number of workers available on this particular day. It does this by sweeping through the holidays list and reducing the total staff for each member of staff on holiday on the given day. So our first task is to get the total number of staff on the date in question. So we're going to create a local variable to hold the total number of staff. And in order to prevent this function becoming too complicated, we're going to break out to another function whose job it will be to return the total workers on a specific date. So we're going to look at the staff array, which contains all the information on the staff, and the date we're currently processing, which we got in on the parameters list of this function. So we'll come back in a moment to create this new function, but we will assume for the moment it will return the total number of staff. So having obtained the total number of staff that could be working on that day, we now need to reduce that number by those who are on holiday on the date we're processing for. So we're going to sweep through the holidays array and decrement the total number of staff. So this is going to be a for next loop, from the beginning to the end of our holidays array. We can pick up the holiday date by looking at the holidays array, and we're looking at the date column. Having these enumerations in your code helps to document what your code is actually doing. So if the holiday we pick up from the holidays array matches the date we're processing, then we quite simply decrement the total number of staff. We reduce it by 1. And at the end of the function, we're passing the total number of staff left to the calling function. So we now have another function we'll need to prepare, which is the total workers on a particular date. This function will have the simple job of working out the total number of workers on that specific day. Once this information is passed back to the calling function, then the value will be put into the third column of our output file. In our function, after that, we save the entire array to disk. So if we have a look at the save routine, we'll see at the moment it's only outputting 2 columns, and they're using the old construct. So we'll need to put our enumerations in here as well. So we've now added to the headers to put in a column for the workers available. Next, we will print that value out to our file. And there is the detail of the workers going out to the file. And I've also changed the element for the date and the day to use our enumerations. Now we've added a couple of local variables for our for next loop and for our holiday information. If we attempt to compile our application now, it should compile cleanly. And if we attempt to run it, just to see what we're going to get out of the application. And if we have a look at the output day list, so at the moment, we're having a value put into the workers available, which is either 0 or minus. It's showing minus for the ones where somebody is on holiday, as we have not yet completed the function to work out the total number of workers. However, it helps to identify those dates where workers would be on holiday. So let's just check that logic by bringing up the holidays CSV file. So here on the right are the dates on which people are on holiday. So if we have a look at the 17th, it would indicate that we have one person on holiday on the 17th, which we do. So we should have two people on holiday on the 20th. If we look at the 20th, we have a -2. We also have two people on holiday on the 23rd, which we do indeed, and one person on holiday on the 27th, which we do. So our next job then is to work out the total number of employees, and this should then tell us how many workers are available on each day. So once more, back to our code. So if we now pad out the rest of this function, the total workers on date, I'm going to create a number of local variables. A total, a period start, a period end, and another variable we're going to use to step through our staff array. So again, as before, we're going to use a for next loop. This will step through each element within the staff array, picking up the start date and the end date of our members of staff. As it's quite possible that some of the staff may not have started yet, they may start at some point in the future, we'll need to pick up their start date, so that we do not include them if they have not yet started. We also may have members of staff who have already left the organisation, or would have left the organisation by the time we get to the end of the 90 days. Therefore, we cannot include them on our list of total workers. The majority of staff will be current workers who will not have an end date. So if the end date is blank, we can assume that they're still working on the current period. So we can capture that in a simple if statement by populating the period end date by the date that come in on the parameter to this function, which is the date we're processing for. Next, we'll want to check for future start dates. And this is where we're going to make use of one of the functions in our new date functions library, is future date. This will return true or false. True if the date is in the future, and false if it is not. It takes three parameters. The first parameter is the period start. This is the starting date of the user. The second parameter is another date, but this is the date we are processing for. And the final parameter is the date format. Is this UK or US format? We'll have a look at this function in a moment. If this function returns true, then the date is in the future. This person has not yet started. Therefore, we're going to use the iterate command to move on to the next call to the for next loop, and to move on to the next row in the array. Next, we're going to check for past end dates. This is where the person has already left the organisation. And again, we can use the same function, but reversing the dates, with the base date being the date processing and the period end date being the second one. If this returns true, then the staff end date is before the date we are processing, so we don't want to count this member of staff either. And again, we will use the iterate command to move on to the next row in the array. And finally, we're going to be using another function in our library. This is the date in period function. This takes four parameters. It takes the start date, it takes the period start, the period end, and also the date format. The purpose of this function is to work out, is the date inclusive in these two start and end dates. If this does return true, then the person was actually employed on that particular date. Therefore, we can increment the total number of workers. And the final part of this function is to finish off the for next loop and to return the total to the calling routine. So the beauty of using these library functions is it makes your code quite readable and much easier to follow. And you can use these functions anywhere in your applications where dates are involved. So before we run the application, let's have a quick look at these two functions. First of all, the isFutureDate. As you will see from the beginning of the library, there's a little bit of documentation telling you there are three parameters, and the function will return true or false if the date is greater than the baseline date. And here is the function. It's not very complicated, But it does make use of another function within this library, the date number. It creates two local variables, both as quad numbers. This is based on the date coming in on the parameters list and the baseline date. These are basically two numbers, and if the date is actually larger than the baseline date, we return true, otherwise we return false. Converting these dates to numbers makes the before and after calculation very easy to do. And here is the dateInPeriod function. It again uses date number and performs a similar type calculation. First of all, ensuring that the dates are indeed valid, and next to work out whether the dates are within range, and returns true or false. So now that we have all the code in place, let's try running the application and see if we get the results we expect. So our application has run quite quickly. Let's now have a look at our output file. There is the output day list. If we bring that one up, we'll see that at the beginning of the file we have 5 workers available and 4 on the 17th. So we now have our 3 output files on screen. On the left-hand side we have the output file, and on the 12th of the 3rd we can see we have 5 workers available. We have a look at the staff file, we can see we have 6 workers. However, one of the workers does not start until the 20th of March. It's currently the 11th of March, so this member of staff has not yet started. Therefore, they will not be included until the 20th of March. If we look at the 20th of March and look beyond it, there's the 24th, and on that day there are 6 members of staff because no one's on holiday. On the 23rd, we have 2 people on holiday, and 6 staff minus 2 gives us a value of 4. So our processing is correctly calculating the number of workers available on each day. We can change this even further by putting an end date in for one of the members of staff. So let's do that. So here we have our 6 members of staff. On one of the dates, let's say the 1st of April, we have 6 members of staff, so no one's on holiday. So what we're going to do is we're going to make this member of staff leave the day before. So their last working day is going to be the 31st of March. If we save that and we attempt to run our calculation once more, we have now recalculated. So let's load up the output file and we'll load up the staff and the holidays file. So there we have all 3 files. We have employee number 5, who has left on the 31st of March. So if we look at the 1st of April, we'll see the total number of workers available has now been reduced to 5. And 6 no longer appears anywhere after that, because this member of staff has actually left. But before that, on their last day, there were 6 members of staff. So in summary, what we've done to our application today is we have reversed it to create future dates. We have then created a staff list and a holidays list. And we're adding a 3rd column to this output file, telling us the number of staff who are available for work on those particular days. This takes into account the number of staff who have either left the organisation or not yet joined the organisation. Plus, anyone who is on holiday is not included in that figure. So using this mechanism, you can look ahead 90 days to see how many staff you're going to have available for work on any particular weekday. Hopefully, you'll find this approach and these functions useful in your applications, but that's it for today. Thank you for watching.
Thank you for watching today's video. Please feel free to click on the link in the description below to discover more videos.